Welcome to Vinted with Scout Driscoll. Come along with me on my journey into the wine world, where I share thoughtful conversations with wine industry leaders. Get ready for marketing insights from branding and design to sales and social media, and the answer to the ultimate question: what moves wine? Hi everyone, I'm Scout Driscoll, founder of Vin Studio and host of Vinted, where I ask top leaders in the wine industry, how do you move wine? Our past guests include folks like Amy Troutmiller, CEO of Commonfield Consulting, and Faith Hurley and Stacey Callaghan from Pinpoint Collective. Today we're talking to Sara Moll from VinSocial. It's going to be an awesome episode talking all about how you can leverage new digital technologies and modern ways of marketing your winery. But first, a quick message from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Vint Wine Branding and Design, where rich storytelling meets smart design. At Vint, our studio goes beyond the label, guiding wine brands through strategy-rich branding and packaging evolutions. Our work with Cooper's Hawk has helped them grow the nation's largest wine club to over 450,000 members. You can learn more about Vint at vint.studio, or you can email me for a free audit for your brand or label. Just email me at hello@vint.studio. For today's episode, I'm delighted to introduce you to Sara Moll. Sara is the founder and CEO of Vin Social, a fast-growing virtual events and e-commerce company pioneering the world of virtual hospitality in the craft wine and spirit space. After leaving a decade-long career in the fashion industry to work in multiple facets of the wine world, Sara created Vin Social with the mission of democratizing access to the wine conversation and has set out and designed a modern approach to wine education. Welcome to the show, Sara. I'm so excited to have you today.
And thank you for having me, Scout. It's awesome to be here.
You are all about, democratizing wine and allowing more people to access wine. And I think what I really loved so far, the best description I've heard of VinSocial was that it was wine experiences for brands. So walk us through how you allow, corporate brands to bring wine experiences to their customers, but also what that means to serve the wineries as well. What are some of the favorite events you've hosted and what makes it an actual experience, even though it's digital?
Yes. So really VinSocial was built with a single mission, which is just to really make the wine conversation more accessible, more inclusive. And, ironically, the global pandemic sort of allowed us to really realize that mission in a really real way and accelerate that vision of expansion through the virtual medium. The virtual medium is inherently much more accessible, much more inclusive. You don't have to drive or fly or have the means to go to Napa to encounter a great winery and have a really evocative experience around wine. And so for us, we did a major pivot in mid 2020, sort of in response to the pandemic. The history of VinSocial was, doing a lot of in-person corporate entertaining, as well as consumer-facing education around wine. But we really realized a huge opportunity when essentially the traditional ways of wining and dining and the way business gets done. We always say business is done on the bar stool. It's not done in the boardroom. And when the proverbial bar stool is shut down because of a pandemic, how do companies keep that really important relationship building dynamic with their most important relationships, their customers or their prospective customers? And so we stepped in as really leading sort of the bleeding edge of what is possible in the virtual environment to deliver real engaging, high-touch hospitality through virtual wine tastings and eventually expanding into things like cocktail tastings and spirits tastings and all the sippable categories, if you will. So we serve corporate clients that way, but on the other side of the spectrum, we actually are working very closely with the brands themselves, the alcohol brands. Because each of our programs is actually built around a brand and really amplifying their story. For us, the most compelling thing about discovering a new wine or a new amazing whiskey is really the stories beyond the bottles. And that's really about the human beings and the purpose, their why. Like, why are they doing this? What drives them? What's their differentiator? And so building programs that really allow us to sort of be an extension of their brand, introducing these wider audiences to, the founders, and then of course, walking them through a very interactive discovery of the products themselves. So in a way, we sort of designed this alternative sales and marketing channel for these brands and connecting them to these corporate audiences of very high value customers.
It seems like your events are pretty large. Like, how large are the biggest events that you've hosted?
Actually, not large. We really we sit in a very sort of premium layer, I would say, and a lot of our clients are paying top dollar to bring their important relationships to the virtual table, if you will. And so, a sense of intimacy and connection is really important. So I would say average is maybe 30 to 60 people, but we do events as small as 10. Because we really do want to make sure that we can foster that ability for every guest in the room to feel seen and heard and be able to participate. And, as the crowd gets larger, it gets a little bit more difficult to execute and deliver on that. So
yeah, it seems like a larger crowd might be more of a show, whereas a smaller crowd might be more of an intimate, actual real connection with winemakers and producers and storytellers. I love that. I love the opportunity for people to always go beyond the back of the label, really engage with that brand. And when you have a smaller audience, you're able to have that brand really seep into the being of the event and allow people to become not only, people who enjoy that wine, but really brand ambassadors. And I think that's such a great opportunity that you provide from the provider side and from the producer side. I also know that part of what you talked about in terms of VinSocial is that you really have a mission to uplift women in wine. And that's something that Vint, obviously being an all women business and a woman owned and occupied business, I like to say, really values as well. Have you worked with any women winemakers or women centered brands that you really love?
That is always our MO. Honestly, we are also woman founded, woman operated, woman occupied brand, if you will. So it's hugely important to us. It's one of our very core brand pillars to really walk the walk in terms of diversity and inclusivity. Mm-hmm. So from partners to brands to talent, we really we always prioritize women if possible, and or people of color, sort of underrepresented folks in this industry. It's an industry that is way behind a lot of other industries in terms of inclusivity. So for us to be able to really show that and be forward with that, the way we talk, the things we do, the decisions we make, it's really extremely important. So I would say probably 70 to 80% of we call it our brand family. So these are the wine and spirits brands that we're working directly with for our corporate programming are women. So women, either women makers or women leaders within the company. So yeah, I mean, you name it. We got, let's see, do you want me to name drop some of the awesome ladies?
Oh, name drop all of the names. I all right, know so who I'm going to be drinking this weekend.
The ladies on our roster include Johanna Jensen Roberts of Keep Wines, based out of California, Katie Wilson, an amazing winemaker out of Sonoma with LaRue Wines. We work very closely with Nancy Ireland. She is an incredible woman winemaker out of upstate New York, gotten twice James Beard Award nominated. VinSocial actually did a co-labeled project with them, a rosé and a red wine that we launched this summer. Let's see who else. Andrea Molyneux is an incredible winemaker out of South Africa. Janie Brooks, not a winemaker, but she is the figurehead and leader of Brooks Winery out of Oregon. The Momtazi sisters from Mesa Raw in Oregon, you name it. The list goes on. But I would say, like I said, 9 out of 10 of the brands we work with right now have women at the helm.
And I love that you're talking about wineries from all over the globe. And that really is kind of living that mission of bringing and democratizing wine, allowing people to experience wine from everywhere, not just from Napa Valley, no matter where they are. And I think it's such a fun representation of that for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Supporting women in wine. I love things like the Baton Forum, of course, Women of the Vine and Spirits. I feel like there's a growing force of not only women, but younger women too. Like there's the opportunity to move the needle in terms of connecting with younger audiences, connecting with broader, more diverse audiences, allowing people to experience wine in a way that's demystifying and not so intimidating. I think there's a lot of women too, also in like the canned wine world. So I always enjoy seeing how not just women, but loud women are starting to really evolve the industry and evolve how the industry speaks to customers and how they connect with them. It's so fun.
I agree. The future of wine is women-led. I can tell you that. And also, I mean, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the woman's approach, but I think what's been missing for a long time, and now we're seeing it evolve, is really that warmth to this industry, which I think was always the intention, but somehow there was a disconnect from the consumer side of, I mean, we heard all the time, it was part of the impetus of the starting VinSocial, that people are intimidated by the subject of wine and they feel compelled to like acquire and compile all this knowledge before they can even join the conversation. And we're like, listen, we'll meet you where you are. Like, it doesn't matter. And it's sort of a misperception that you can really know everything about wine. It's a tremendously vast subject. You can never know it all. I don't know it all. And I've studied it professionally for many years. And in a way, it's just about flipping the script and realizing that that's actually exciting, that it is something that you can pursue for the rest of your life and never get bored. You can never try it all. You can never taste it all. You can never experience it all. So trying to get people to realize that it's a journey. And that's what we tell people, when working with or having an experience with VinSocial, it's about traveling through the glass and just opening up your mind to discover a new culture, meet new people, new flavors, and, really just being open-minded.
Yeah, I feel like there's a brand in every glass, right? Like not, and I think of branding is so differently than most people, but to me, branding is all about storytelling and it's all about that DNA and that emotion. And when you think of a wine that you're enjoying, it's with respect to the larger wineries. I think they do something that is incredible in terms of the number of people they serve. But when you're working with and enjoying a smaller producer, so often you really do get that authentic experience of that land, of that varietal, of that process, in a way that's unlike what you're experiencing.
Yeah, it's easier to feel connected to the source, I think, through these smaller craft producers. And I think that's what a lot of consumers are craving, right? There's a glut of wine options out there, right? Like, how do I differentiate glass A from glass B? And to your point, like, it is about the story. They can both be excellently made, delicious wines, but what's going to really foster a true connection to that product? And it really is all about the story. And it's the human beings and that sort of deeper connection to a purpose or a intention, right? So like for us, it's all about making sure that the producers we're working with have very verified commitments to sustainability and represent diversity and are sort of the hidden gems that get lost in the mix, but we feel, deserve to have more exposure and more people know about them, really.
Yeah, and for so long, the only way people could really learn about wine was through a wine label by doing maybe a tasting in a store, or perhaps the som at a restaurant described it to them. And today, the wineries have so many more tools to bring that story to life. And I think consumers, especially younger consumers, expect more from a brand when it comes to communication. And I love that the real nimble younger wineries are starting to leverage social media so well and digital platforms like VinSocial. What kind of advice do you have in terms of, people who they're farmers, like they're not like they're, I feel like there's, I always joke that like someone once told me that being a winemaker is like having four jobs or, you're a farmer, you're kind of a chef. You're also a actual salesperson. You have to understand how long things stay stable. Like there's just so many different worlds. I feel like so many people who are really highly focused on production, they might not be hip to all the current ways that they can spread their story through online. And I know during the pandemic, a lot of wineries shifted to, of course, focusing primarily on online DTC, doing a lot of Facebook Live. But what is some advice that you have, whether it's, ways to have a more engaging live experience or ways to leverage other digital platforms? What do you recommend for wineries?
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting it on the head. We always say the same thing, like of being a winemaker is essentially being an entrepreneur, a founder, where you have to wear every hat in the company. And you probably got into starting your business because you had one facet of a passion point, right? And if you're a winemaker, it might be the farming aspect or it might be the wine craft, right? But most likely it's not being a digital marketer, right? And I would say we encounter that all the time with the type of wineries that we're always looking to partner with, or which are the wineries on the smaller scale. But yeah, I think honestly, like the lessons learned through COVID, hopefully are going to remain intact, right? Which is everyone had to get really scrappy and realize, well, how do I stay in contact with my customer if they can't physically walk through the door? right? Which in and of itself is quite an inefficient sales channel. To expect the customer to stumble upon your physical space in wine country, become a wine club subscriber, right? So leveraging the digital medium is paramount, right? Like there's no way you can compete without really figuring out how to leverage digital, whether that be social media or, adding digital engagement opportunities on top of your direct to consumer sort of wine club experience. And so a lot of these wineries, I know, like you said, they started doing Instagram lives or Facebook lives or virtual events on Zoom. And I think the challenge is really maintaining that, as to your point, things kind of normalize and they're being torn in two directions of, well, now I have to drive my attention back to the customers coming into the door. So this is where, I think platforms like us and other virtual event platforms is such a sort of net new opportunity for wineries to really consider. Because like you said, it's getting the brand and the story in front of customers in tandem with the product. There's nothing better than that, right? Where someone is tasting and experience your product and really learning the story of the brand. And it's not in a manufactured way, right? It's not like I'm watching some video that's been overly produced. It's live theater, right? So anything can happen and the guests get to participate, they get to ask their questions, they feel involved in the conversation. And so I think utilizing things like Zoom and is just so important. And it's so easy. Like think about a wine club, how they maybe do quarterly allocation drops to their club membership. Why don't you just invite everyone to a Zoom with the winemaker or, someone from the hospitality staff and take everyone through a tasting of the wines they just received. I think there's just a lot of simple ways to kind of keep that engagement going, and try to really build a legitimate community among your membership base.
I love that. I think there's also, there's an opportunity to kind of add a level of professionalism. But it's so interesting because I think a lot of the brands that we collaborate with, I'm kind of chuckling myself because I'm saying make it more sophisticated, but keep it approachable. And that's so much of what we do in the studio. We often ride the line between very premium and high quality brands that are also the kind of brand that you want to have a beer with. Like you still want to enjoy and engage with it. But I feel like, when it comes to live tastings, there's still a way to go about them in a way that is still professional and approachable and not something in line with your brand. We always focus on helping our clients through what we call our brand compass. And that's really developing like your core emotional North Star and the hows and whys, the core tenets of your brand. And even for a live tasting, you should be using some of those talking points. You should be reiterating. It's not just about, like awkwardly getting on live and engaging with people. It's about following that brand compass and making sure that your brand rich story is coming through in a very concerted way and that you're honing in on those talking points as you go through your wine, whether that is about your process or whether it is about, the culture of your winery. Really making it about storytelling and engaging is so important to me. So that's one of those things I would recommend as people focus on digital experiences is following your brand story, that tone of voice and the overall vibe of your winery.
Exactly. Don't wing it, right? Have a plan.
Yeah.
And not all virtual events or conversations with wineries are created equal, right? We've seen a lot of bad versions out there, which is just, I think a lot of wineries sort of default to the how versus the why. And I don't think the consumers care about the how. Like all wine is essentially kind of made the same way. Like it's not inherently that interesting, sort of the chemistry of it. And yes, we know it's probably fermented. Yes. And then it went in stainless steel or oak. Yes. It went into a bottle. Yes. These are the mechanics. This is not really that compelling. So I'm with you, like the storytelling, the why. Why are you doing this? What gets you up in the morning every day to do this job that is, can be, kind of this wild ride. They're farmers at the end of the day at the mercy of Mother Nature. And there are more and more challenges every year with climate change that they're enduring and, challenges in the market, getting awareness, getting customers, getting penetration. I mean, people don't get into wine to be rich. They get into it because they have a real passion for it. Right. So I think getting them to really tap into that and be transparent about those things is really what will connect much more deeply to the consumers at the end of the day.
I agree. We talk often about how you have your product statement, which is what you do, and then you have your brand statement, which is all the romance. And I think
Yeah.
being armed with both of these. So the product statement is the how, it's where the nuts and bolts meet. For example, we're pretty big fans of Harley Davidson's brand here at the studio. I don't ride a Harley. I wish.
You should.
My mom won't let me ride motorcycles.
Yeah.
I'd be in trouble. But Harley Davidson's had the same brand statement and or the same overall brand emotion for the last 110 years. So it's all about freedom and the open road. And their product statement is like, we create motorcycles that have all these special, treatments to make them super loud and, all these functional things about the motorcycle. But you're never going to see that in an ad for Harley Davidson. The brand statement is that this is American freedom. And that is something that is, has been tried and true throughout the years. And that every single person, whether you're white collar or blue collar, loves. It is the opportunity for the open road and American freedom. And so for wineries to really hone in on, like you said, not just the mechanics of what comes from their wine, but the overall how and why. And beyond the why, I think it's also kind of a story of how it's grown and what makes your land different. Like what is that different about your terroir? For example, we're working with a winery in Oregon, and they are in the middle of this beautiful valley, and it's this canyon, and she's like, the way the moon tracks through the canyon at night, and it's so inspiring with this. And so that's still a very unique story. And I think, maybe there are one too many wineries that are just like, this is our vineyard.
Yeah. Wow. They all come from a vineyard and they're all beautiful.
But it's still, there's still something beyond just how you produce your wine that you can get 100%. To, and that I love.
Yep, that's the X factor in my mind that we're always looking for. There's so many amazing wines out there. There's so many beautiful places, right? But like when we're looking at a brand to partner with it, there has to be some sort of X factor. And I think that inherently comes from the people behind the bottle and how passionate they are and how attuned they are to actually understanding their why and being able to communicate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Are there any, I'm just curious, being a person who is an expert in digital experiences and tastings for wines, any cliches that wineries should avoid? Anything that you're just over?
Cliches. I mean, I think like the old version of wine education has to go. Like these just suits and ties and the pin lapels, and it just sort of proliferates this feeling of elitism, I think, and that scares consumers, especially younger consumers, away. Younger consumers do not value the formalities as sort of our forefathers did. Yeah. And, there's a lot of latency, I would say, in a lot of the wine industry to realizing that you can be a little bit more unpolished, and it's probably preferable. Like removing the formalities and the protocols. It's just, those are just stumbling blocks to people to enter the conversation. So this kind of goes back to like when talking about your wines, and really if you're going to lead any kind of educational interaction engagement virtually, it's just remember that you don't know who's in the audience. And so one thing that we do very intentionally is we assume everybody knows nothing. And, we've built a formula for making sure that we arm everybody in the audience with some real foundational tools to participate in the experience. So that's what we always say, whether you're a novice or a veteran, you can always benefit from revisiting the basics, because it's probably likely there's a misunderstanding. Maybe you've been misinformed. I mean, I hear this all the time where people are like, I've been drinking wine for 20 years and they still are saying the wrong thing, Yeah. So, try not to talk over people's heads. And I think, like I said, just avoiding the technical droning on and on about the scientific aspects that, make a highlight of it. But I see people go down rabbit holes on these tastings, and I'm just like, everyone is falling asleep.
No one wants mansplaining in a wine tasting.
No mansplaining.
But that's kind of what I hear, right? I mean, there's a very long time of people speaking down on high, making you feel intimidated, making them feel, more educated, more ingratiated, and combine that with the price point of wine and the point value of wine. And I think there's so many signals to consumers that if your wine isn't super expensive, if your wine isn't a crazy high point value or whatever that means today, then it's not a good wine. Or if you are going to enjoy that wine, you have to enjoy it in a very formal way. You have to enjoy it in a very specific way, and there are rules for enjoying that. And I think the more we can break people away from that, people will connect with smaller or younger audiences and maintain, the passion for wine and these new younger people who are enjoying wine and bringing the culture of wine into their lives.
Yeah, it's a lifestyle. And I think, that's the thing that, from the beginning I've said is that, as soon as a consumer has the opportunity to visit the source, be at a winery, like especially one that is non like Disneyland version of wine and, the sort of same exclusive, type of wineries you might experience in Napa, but like that real authentic farm winery feel. And you realize there's that aha moment of like, wow, this is actually truly humble. This winemaker is wearing a dirty boots and a t-shirt and jeans. We encourage our winemakers to show up that way. It's like, don't put on a suit for us, like be who you are. And I think, that's the feeling we want people to realize that, wine is truly a humble thing. It's been part of our human DNA, human experience since really the beginning of civilization. It's just been sort of within the last few hundred years that we've kind of bastardized it in a way. And I think a lot of it is just because of sort of the merchant dynamic of wine. So the more we can really facilitate and foster that real engagement between the consumer and the winery, the source, and remove all the BS in the middle that happens, the more that, we'll see younger audiences really adopting and wanting to be part of the wine lifestyle because it truly is sort of the earth and very humble by nature.
Absolutely. I just took a trip with my girlfriends out to the North Fork of Long Island and did one of my favorite wine countries. It's just, I love when I can sit at a picnic table with my best friends and drink a Gruner next to a shack. And
That's what I'm saying.
and
just go
is
take pictures in the vines and touch the grape.
And it's so crazy because I think the North Fork is such a great dichotomy because you have folks like One Woman Winery, which is literally the shack. It's maybe, 10 feet by 10 feet and then just a ton of grapes and picnic tables. And then you have Croteau, which is like the most Instagrammable winery I've ever been to, where every inch of it is just filled with Instagrammable experiences. And it's so polished. There's French music alternating with bossa nova. All the women look like they're straight out of a Ralph Lauren commercial. But I love both. And I think that that's what's so exciting about wine targeted to younger audiences in a way is that there's just such an authenticity and an approachability, and there's room to be who you are, whether that is incredibly coiffed and styled and meant for those younger Instagrammable experiences, or that is literally just a dude standing at a barrel saying, okay, one Gruner, thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just love the range there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that just goes back to your point around really getting concrete about what is your brand about and what does it stand for, and having that be sort of resonating beyond just the label on your bottle, but like you said, even to the experience that you offer, for your hospitality center, if you have one, or you said the way you talk about your brand or the content you're putting on social media. It's like just being targeted and consistent, right? I mean,
it's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. So I always wrap up these podcasts by asking what is the hardest question, but I'm finding as I move through the episodes I'm recording, often a little redundant because we've been talking about this the whole time. But I do want you to share your number one advice for moving wine. How can producers leverage, some of your skill set to move wine? What do you recommend?
I mean, I guess beyond just, like I said, really focusing on authentic storytelling around your brand to really differentiate yourself among the masses, is creating opportunities to really actually connect and build connection with your consumer base, whether that be your wine club or your newsletter base. And there's so many easy free tools right? Like Instagram, Zoom, to actually do this and foster this. And it doesn't take a tremendous amount of effort, but I think it goes a long way. Just offering yourself as available, and really being there to listen and engage in a real conversation with your customers is just so important. You learn so much. I mean, just opening up questions, you'll hear what people want to know, what they don't understand. And I think that's just a great opportunity that's also can be missed is not seeing those opportunities as like a listening tour, to really understand who are these people, what are their likes, their dislikes, their concerns, and doing more of what they want.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that because our last episode was all about listening and all about using design thinking to better understand your end consumer. So if anyone's listening and wants to get a few more tips on how to think about your business through the lens of walking through your experience as your own consumer, definitely check out our episode with the Pinpoint Collective, Faith Hurley and Stacey Callaghan that we released last week. So highly recommend checking that out.
Can't wait to listen to that one.
It's so fun. They're such badass ladies. I cannot tell you. So I'm here with Sara Moll. Sara, thank you so much. Sara's from Vin Social, a fast-growing virtual events and e-commerce company. If your brand is looking to connect with more people, Sara's private events, they're all digital, connecting wineries with consumers are so critical and so awesome. So I'm just so excited to have you on. And I know we didn't talk a lot about your product and your brand today, but I'm just so excited about making this podcast really about advice. But I'm going to advise you listeners to find Sara, find VinSocial, check out what they're doing, and come experience how she can connect you with consumers that you haven't even considered connecting with yet in a really fun and unique way. Sara, thank you so much for joining me today. How can people find you online?
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Yeah, find me online at vinsocial.co. And I'm a big LinkedIn fan. So find me on LinkedIn, connect, send me a note, especially if you're from the industry. Like, I'm very accessible. DM me. We can set up a combo. I'm happy to share my learnings and advice. And thank you again.
Awesome. Thanks for listening to Vinted. Tune in for the next Vinted. Subscribe today. For future episodes, marketing advice, and more, follow me on Instagram at Scout Driscoll. Learn more about Vin's design and branding services for wineries at www.vint.studio.